Welcome back to the deep dive. And you know the drill by now. We take complex information, we stack up all the insights, and we deliver what we hope is the ultimate tactical shortcut to being well informed.
Exactly.
Today, our focus is razor sharp. It's highly practical. We are zeroing in on one of the most immediate and, let's be honest, challenging hurdles for anyone in higher education.
Absolutely.
We're talking about how students can start earning real money right now without needing a huge pile of cash to start or, having to shelve their academic life completely.
And that's the key, isn't it? That distinction.
Uh-huh.
Because when most people think about starting a business, they get these images of like complex financing or needing to dedicate 40, 50 hours a week.
Full-time commitment, yeah.
But the resource we're really digging into today, it provides a blueprint. It's a list of 10, I'd say, surprisingly practical, very low barrier business ideas.
Yeah.
And they're curated specifically for a student schedule and maybe more importantly, their existing skill set.
Right.
So these aren't just, time wasters or little pocket money gigs. They're designed to be scalable side hustles that can start generating income almost immediately.
Absolutely. So our mission today, it isn't just to, read off a list. It's to give you the operational manual for each one. We're going to examine these 10 concepts that are designed to leverage your knowledge, your creativity, and most importantly, utilize that one resource everyone has, which is free time.
What little of it a student has.
Exactly, without interfering with school. We want to give you a clear step-by-step roadmap. We're going to focus on how to execute that first launch successfully, and then, crucially, how to grow what you start bit by bit.
And what really stands out to me about this particular list is just its pragmatic diversity. It's not all one type of thing. It expertly spans these 4 key pillars of what you might call the modern microeconomy.
Yeah, what are those?
So you've got your traditional services, you have digital contracting, you have creative work, and then you have actual product commerce. And that approach, it allows any student really, regardless of their major, STEM, humanities, arts, whatever, to find a path to monetization that lines up with skills they already have.
Or skills that are easy to pick up.
Or skills that have a really low, fast learning curve. Exactly. It's all about leveraging what you're already competent at and turning that into cash flow.
So to make this as useful as possible, we've organized these 10 ideas into 4 distinct logical categories. We're going to start where the barrier to entry is, well, I'd argue it's the lowest. Monetizing what you already know. We're calling that the knowledge exchange.
Good name for it.
Then we're going to move into the digital and creative economy, followed by the logistical challenges of tangible products and commerce. And then finally, we'll wrap up with a look at some practical, responsibility-focused interpersonal services.
And I think that structure helps a ton because it frames all the options based on what you need to put in. If you're short on cash, but you're rich in knowledge, you start with section 1.
Makes sense.
If you have some free time and a smartphone, section 2 is probably where you want to look. It really allows you, the listener, to quickly pinpoint where your personal market advantage is and, start building out your launch strategy from there.
All right, let's do it. Let's dive straight into section 1, the knowledge exchange. The real beauty of these first 3 ideas is that they're basically capital free.
Almost zero cost to start, yeah.
They require minimal equipment beyond the knowledge that's already in your head. It's just pure intellectual monetization.
Which represents the absolute lowest financial barrier to entry, right? You're trading your intellectual capital for immediate income. And the first idea, really the cornerstone of this whole section, is tutoring.
Yeah, the classic. Tutoring just means helping another student, or it could be an adult master, a specific subject. The source material uses a really simple example. Teaching basic math to younger students if you happen to excel in, say, calculus.
Right.
But this can apply to anything. Test prep, history, essay structure, even basic coding, if that's your thing.
And if we look at the logistics of it, the source really hammers home this zero equipment idea. You just need your brain and maybe a quiet place to meet. But what I think elevates this from just a casual favor to a professional side hustle is how you manage the operation itself.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Well, for online tutoring, for instance, you have to establish some technical competence. You're going to use Zoom, Google Meet. Are you going to use a platform that's actually designed for this with shared whiteboards? And this is crucial. How are you handling the money?
The payment.
Yeah. Relying on, cash or checks is just, it's inefficient. It feels amateur. Using platforms like Zelle, Venmo, or even setting up a tiny merchant account through something like Stripe for scheduled payments. That signals professionalism. Tells the client, usually the parents, that you're taking this seriously.
That focus on professionalism is so, so vital. You're not just selling your time. You're selling confidence. You're selling results. And the flexibility is key for a student schedule, right? You can schedule these sessions after school, on weekends. You could even slot in a 45-minute block between your own classes. But let me challenge this a little bit. The student is selling their time directly, one-to-one. That limits how much you can scale, doesn't it?
It does, initially. And that's where the scaling path begins, even for a service like tutoring.
Yeah.
Once you start to build a reputation and your one-on-one schedule gets saturated,
You're fully booked.
you're fully booked. The immediate next step is small group instruction. So instead of charging 2 students, say $40 each for 2 separate hours, you charge them maybe $30 each for one single consolidated hour of group work.
Oh, that's smart.
You've just maximized your hourly return. You went from 40 an hour to 60 an hour, and you've given the students a slight discount and this opportunity for peer learning. That's the first practical step towards scaling up and increasing your hourly wage without just working more hours.
And that gets back to what you were saying before. It's tactical superiority. You're selling improved results and confidence, not just access to your time.
Exactly. And parents see this as an investment in their child's future, which is why they're willing to pay. It ensures reliable payment, and it often allows for higher rates than you'd get for, general unskilled labor. You're setting your rate based on the value you deliver, better grades, more confidence, not just the time you spend.
Okay, that makes a ton of sense. Moving on to the second idea here in the knowledge exchange, editing and proofreading. This is precision work. It's all about monetizing a really refined eye for detail.
And the required skill is, on the surface, simple. It's mastery of your native language, specifically being highly proficient in grammar and composition. If your essays are consistently getting top marks, you already have the validated skill set. You've got proof.
And the service you're providing is so critical. You're helping other students fix grammar, syntax, structural problems in these really crucial documents, essays, applications, reports, even presentations.
High-stakes documents.
Very high-stakes documents where a single error can make a huge difference. But let's address a potential issue here. The operational line between, say, helpful editing and actual academic dishonesty can get a little blurry. How does a student proofreader manage those ethical boundaries?
That is a necessary conversation for anyone operating professionally in this space. The student has to establish a really clear scope of service right up front.
Yeah.
Are you providing line-by-line grammar correction? Or are you restructuring entire arguments and inserting new content?
Big difference.
A huge difference. The rule of thumb for preserving academic integrity is this: focus on mechanics and clarity, not on content generation. A great way to do this technically is to use the track changes function exclusively in Word or Google Docs. That forces the client to accept or reject each change, which makes it crystal clear that they retain final ownership and responsibility for the work they submit.
Okay, so that protects both the student client and you, the service provider. You're safe from any accusations of, crossing the line into ghostwriting.
Exactly. It's a liability shield.
And again, the execution is so streamlined, it only requires a laptop or even just a phone. You get the document, you apply your expertise, you send it back. But what about pricing? How should a student price this kind of service? Per hour or maybe per word?
I would argue that pricing by word count is generally more efficient and scalable for a student. It removes the client's incentive to, say, slow down the process, and it helps you forecast your earnings more accurately.
How so?
Well, let's say you charge a flat rate per 1,000 words. As you get faster and more efficient at editing, your effective hourly rate goes up dramatically. You're rewarding your own skill improvement. Now, if the work is extremely dense or requires specialized formatting, like complex APA or MLA citation checking, then a higher hourly rate might be justified. That way you're compensated for the extra cognitive load.
The source material also points out this secondary kind of beautiful benefit to doing this. It actually improves your own writing skills.
Oh, massively.
The more you analyze and correct other people's mistakes, the better you become at self-editing and spotting your own blind spots. It's an income stream that's also doubling as professional development.
It absolutely is. You are literally getting paid to refine a highly valuable professional skill. It's a win-win.
Okay, so the third and final idea in this knowledge exchange section is language teaching. This is about leveraging a skill that a lot of people have and maybe don't even think of as a business: Bilingualism.
Right, the prerequisite is straightforward. You speak two languages.
Yeah.
And that is such an invaluable asset in today's global economy. It's often a really underutilized skill among students who grew up in bilingual households.
For sure. And the target audience is huge. It's not just other students. You can teach children, maybe introducing basic concepts through games and play. You can teach busy adults who just want to learn simple travel phrases for a vacation.
Or professionals who need very specific vocabulary for their job.
Exactly. The focus here, as the source notes, is on the practical. You're teaching beginners simple speaking skills, core vocabulary, and clear pronunciation. It's all about bridging that gap to functional communication.
And when you're thinking about scaling this, the format flexibility is paramount for a student. The lessons can be incredibly short. The source mentions 20 or 30 minutes.
Which seems really short.
It does, but why is a 20-minute daily session often more profitable and effective than a 2-hour weekly session for a beginner? It's because consistency drives results in language learning. A client is way more likely to commit to and pay for 5 short, consistent, daily exposure lessons than one huge, intimidating marathon session a week.
That makes perfect sense. The perceived burden of the time commitment is so much lower. But let's address something the source brings up. It says you don't need to be perfect. And while that's probably true, what is the minimum level of proficiency a student really needs to be effective and, trustworthy?
That's a great question. They need proficiency relative to the client's goal. That's the key. If the client just wants to learn basic conversational Spanish for a trip to Mexico, a student who is conversationally fluent, say a C1 level, is perfectly qualified.
They don't need to be a literature professor.
Not at all. The value you're providing isn't in linguistic perfection. It's in your confidence, your patience, and your ability to explain complex concepts in a simple way. If you can confidently guide someone from knowing zero Spanish to being able to order a coffee and ask for directions, you are providing immense paid value. Your main job is to be an enthusiastic, helpful guide.
So to recap this first section, these 3 ideas, tutoring, editing, and language teaching, they all start with basically zero capital, just your time and your expertise, and they all offer these immediate pathways to professionalizing the academic skills you already have.
A perfect starting point for almost anyone.
All right, let's pivot now into the realm of the modern contractor. Section 2 is all about the digital and creative economy. These ideas are centered on leveraging technology, visual skills, and creative output. And the big operational shift here is that success often hinges on learning some simple digital tools and then just maintaining rigorous consistency.
This is where we monetize visual communication and platform mastery. The tools themselves are more accessible than ever, but the execution requires real discipline. Let's kick things off with graphic design.
Right. So the core service here is creating visual assets for business needs. We're talking logos, banners, posters, social media posts.
Yeah.
The really incredible thing here is the democratization of the field, which the source highlights. It stresses that you have access to free tools like Canva, Pixlr, Adobe Express. You literally do not need to own Photoshop anymore.
No, you don't. And that lower barrier to entry means that success is now defined by other things. It's defined by your taste, your speed, and your understanding of some basic design principles. And that's the operational depth we need to add to this conversation.
Okay, so what are those principles?
Well, a student starting out has to know, for example, the difference between raster and vector. Raster images are like JPEGs. They're pixel-based. They get blurry when you scale them up.
Yeah.
Vector files are mathematically defined, so they're scalable infinitely. Even if a tool like Canva handles the conversion, you need to know which one to give a client for a logo.
That's a good point.
They also need to understand basic typography. Why using more than 2 font families on a single poster is just visually chaotic. And color contrast to make sure the design is accessible and actually readable.
That simple knowledge shifts the discussion from I can click a template to I understand why this template works, and that elevates your perceived value immediately. The market opportunity for this is huge, right? Think of all the small local shops, student clubs, online sellers who need clean, fast, inexpensive visual branding.
It's massive. And let's talk about the pricing and the growth path here. When you're just starting, you might charge a flat, say, $25 for a small flyer design.
Yeah.
But as you build a portfolio, you need to start differentiating your pricing based on usage rights.
Usage rates.
Yeah. Are you designing a personal birthday invitation for a friend? Or are you designing a logo that the client is going to use commercially on their products for the next 10 years? Those are 2 very different things. Commercial usage rights should command significantly higher rates. it protects your intellectual property, and it compensates you for the wider application of your creative work.
So it really boils down to practice and a willingness to learn. The student should probably prioritize creating a small, high-quality portfolio of maybe 5 to 10 concept designs before they even take their first paid client.
Absolutely. The portfolio is your currency in the creative economy. It's your proof of work. Now, next up is social media management, which, as you mentioned earlier, is often seen as this necessary digital drudgery for small businesses.
Yeah, it solves a massive problem. Small businesses, they lack the time or maybe just the consistent effort that's required to post regularly across all these platforms. They know they need to be on Instagram and TikTok, but the task just feels overwhelming.
And that's where the student comes in. The student's role is to be the consistent executor. You're taking simple, appealing photos, writing short, engaging captions that are tailored to the platform's voice, and then scheduling the posts reliably. The big operational challenge here is avoiding content burnout, both for yourself and for the client.
Okay, that's a real issue. So if the client is, let's say, a local cafe, how does the student manager avoid running out of things to post about after just 2 weeks? How do you structure that work to keep it fresh?
You need systems. It's
Yep.
all about systems. First, you batch your content creation. You dedicate 2 hours on a Monday morning to take all the photos you'll need and write all the captions for the entire week.
Smart. Get it all done at once.
Exactly. Secondly, you use simple scheduling tools, things like Hootsuite, Buffer, or even the free Meta Business Suite to automate the actual posting. And thirdly, and this is so important, you define the scope of service up front. In your contract, does your fee cover only organic posting, so photos and captions, or does it also include community management, like responding to comments and DMs and basic analytics tracking?
Scope creep. The killer of all freelance work.
It is. Clearly defining that scope prevents scope creep, and it protects your time. It keeps a small job from turning into a massive one.
And that clarity is just essential for running a sustainable small business. The advice to start with one local shop for a small monthly fee is great because it allows the student to build a reputation for one thing: reliability. And that reliability is probably the most valuable asset you're selling.
It truly is. Reliability and consistent execution are the two things small business owners just don't have time for. If you can deliver 3 polished, scheduled posts every single week without them having to think about it, that client will likely keep you on retainer indefinitely.
Okay, so the third idea in this creative section, photography. This is all about turning what can be a very expensive hobby into actual profit.
And right away, the source material just smashes the equipment barrier myth. It explicitly says you do not need an expensive DSLR camera. A high-quality smartphone is sufficient to start as long as the lighting is good and you learn some basic composition and editing.
That is the ultimate democratization, isn't it? If your phone can take decent, high-resolution photos, you are in business. So let's look at expanding the service menu. Beyond just simple headshots for students or covering local school events, where else can a student photographer find some low-pressure, paying clients?
Product photography for microbusinesses is a huge, largely untapped market for students. Think about the student we just talked about who's selling handmade crafts.
Right, from Section 3.
Or the local jeweler who sells online. They need high-quality, consistent photos of their items against a clean background. You can offer a simple package: 10 high-resolution photos for your Etsy listing, charged at a flat rate. It's manageable, it's low-risk work, and it builds a really diverse portfolio very quickly.
The source also mentions the scalability aspect through the e-commerce angle, selling photos online via stock photo websites. But I think we need to clarify the expectations here. This is not fast money.
No, not at all. We have to be realistic about microstock rates. Stock photo sites like Shutterstock or Adobe Stock, they operate on a licensing model, which is typically royalty-free. This means the buyer pays a small fee once, and they can use that image pretty much forever.
And the photographer gets.
The photographer usually earns fractions of a dollar per download. We're talking maybe 25 cents to a dollar. To earn any significant passive income from this, you need massive volume. You need hundreds, sometimes thousands, of high-quality, useful, generic photos uploaded and approved by the platform. It's a long-tail investment, not a get-rich-quick scheme.
So the immediate profit is going to come from that local service work, and the passive income is more of a slow-burn investment for the future. The key takeaway here seems to be that your skills improve with practice. The student who starts out doing free event photography this month will be charging professional rates for product photos by next year.
Exactly. The digital economy rewards learning and consistent output above all else.
Okay, let's shift gears completely now. Section 3 is all about the tangible economy. We're talking about things you can actually hold, things you make or things you buy and then sell. The core concept here is learning how to assess market need, how to manage inventory, and how to test demand with physical products.
Right, and these ideas force the student to grapple with some really traditional business challenges. Inventory, production costs, distribution. It's a whole different ballgame.
Starting with selling homemade snacks, this one taps directly into immediate local demand.
And why does this work so well for a student? It's because it capitalizes on proximity and convenience. Students are always looking for affordable, immediate snacks during those quick 10-minute breaks between classes. You're eliminating the barrier of them having to leave campus or walk to a high-priced store. You're right there.
The simple item examples given in the source, cookies, sandwiches, fruit cups, lemonade, they're perfect. They're low complexity starting points. But let's get tactical here. The operational advice is critical, especially when it comes to managing spoilage and profitability. How does the student accurately track their cost of goods sold, their KGS?
They need a simple spreadsheet. It could even just be in the Notes app on their phone.
Yeah.
But KGS is critical. You divide the total cost of all your ingredients, flour, eggs, butter, packaging, everything, by the total number of items you produced. So the ingredients for 20 cookies cost you $10. Your KGS is 50 cents per cookie. Now, if you sell them for $2.50, you have a solid 80% margin. That's great. But if your profit margin dips below, say, 40%, you need to either raise your price or find a way to simplify the ingredients. That kind of operational discipline starts with just understanding your basic KGS.
And what about the marketing tip? The source says leverage social media, which makes sense. Post photos of your appealing snacks. But the operational advice is just as important. Start small, test a few items, and analyze what sells the fastest.
And that analysis is pure grassroots marketer research. If you make 30 chocolate chip cookies and 10 really complex fruit cups, and the cookies sell out in 15 minutes while the fruit cups are still sitting there at the end of the day,
You stop making fruit cups.
you stop making fruit cups immediately. The market is telling you exactly what it values most. So you iterate. You focus your production on your top sellers to maximize your profit, and just as importantly, minimize your waste.
Okay, next up is handmade crafts, which is about injecting your personal creativity into physical products.
This one is for the students who genuinely love the process of creation. It could be making bracelets, keychains, candles, small drawings, whatever. And the value proposition is really high here because people will willingly pay a premium for handmade items
Why is that?
because they're unique and they feel personal. They're not just buying a product, they're buying a story and a little piece of individuality.
The sales strategy seems straightforward enough. Sell at school events, local fairs, or online. But what if the student starts getting custom orders? Let's say 50 personalized keychains for a club event. How do they manage those fulfillment timelines and make sure they get paid before they sink all their money into materials?
Right, the tactical approach here is simple. Deposits and clear deadlines. For any custom order that involves a significant investment in materials, the student absolutely must request a 50% non-refundable deposit upfront.
Non-refundable.
Non-refundable. This covers your cost of goods, and it ensures the client is serious. They also have to establish a realistic timeline. If a personalized bracelet takes 2 hours to make, and you have classes and homework all week, the delivery date has to reflect that reality. It's not going to be next day delivery. It's always better to underpromise and overdeliver on the timeline.
Those logistics are just crucial for maintaining your mental health while you're trying to balance school, right? So this is ideal for students who enjoy being creative but want a low-cost, manageable business.
Exactly. The initial investment is so low, some beads, thread, wax, and you can easily recoup it in your first few sales. And in the process, this teaches students how to manage raw material inventory and their own labor cost against the perceived market value of what they're creating.
Okay, finally, in this section, we turn to online reselling. This is the classic concept of arbitrage. You're buying and selling goods to profit from the price differences in the market.
And this requires a really sharp entrepreneurial eye. The core concept is simple: buy low, sell high. It's all about leveraging what's called informational asymmetry, basically, knowing that an item is worth more than the person selling it realizes.
The sourcing locations are key here. Local markets, secondhand shops, or even just clearing out unused items from our own home. But let's dig deeper into the actual skill required to identify those undervalued items. How does a student effectively comp something find comparable sales to know what it's worth.
The first rule of arbitrage is this. Don't buy based on what you think its potential is. Buy based on its proven sales history. The student needs to be able to instantly check platforms like eBay and use the sold listings filter. Or search recent comparable sales on Poshmark.
So you're looking at what things have actually sold for, not what people are asking for them.
Exactly. If you find a vintage jacket for $10 at a thrift store, you have to pause, pull out your phone, check the completed sales data, and confirm that similar jackets have actually sold for $50 or more. If they have, your $40 gross profit margin is basically secured. If they haven't, it's just a gamble. The thrill of the hunt has to be tempered by data.
That makes the entire process systematic rather than just based on pure luck. The source says popular products remain things like clothes, books, accessories, and small gadgets.
Right. And the execution requirements are minimal, but they have to be high quality. You need to take clear, well-lit photos, which connects right back to our photography section. You need to write honest, detailed descriptions, and you need to choose your platform wisely.
What do you mean by that?
Well, a student selling a used textbook might prefer Facebook Marketplace for a local, no-fee transaction. But a student selling niche vintage clothing should probably use a platform like Poshmark or Depop. Even if those platforms have higher fees, the targeted audience is already there waiting for you.
And the risk assessment here is critical. The source calls it an easy way to earn extra money with little risk, but that's only true if you adhere to that COD/GS and comps analysis. You're learning supply and demand dynamics in real time.
It is the closest thing a student can have to a financial laboratory. You're managing inventory, pricing, marketing, customer service. These three tangible ideas, the snacks, the crafts, and the reselling, they give the student a really deep, hands-on understanding of product-based commerce.
Okay, so we arrive at our final category. This one focuses less on academic or technical skills and much more on personal traits: responsibility, patience, and reliability. This is section 4. Practical and interpersonal services, and we're concluding with one highly in-demand, locally focused job.
This final idea, pet sitting or dog walking, it capitalizes on the high local demand that's generated by busy professionals and families, and it requires a very specific kind of soft skill set.
The market need is just massive. Busy people need reliable, trustworthy care for their pets, which, let's face it, are seen as family members. They need someone to come in and feed them, provide water, or take the dogs for walks during the workday or when they're traveling.
The tasks themselves are straightforward, but the operational discipline has to be extremely high. When you are visiting people's homes, which is usually required for pet sitting, you are being entrusted with an immense amount of responsibility. Beyond just the immediate task of feeding a cat, a student needs to establish clear key management protocols.
Key management?
Yeah. How are keys exchanged? Is there a backup plan if a key is lost or you get locked out?
Yeah.
Thinking through that level of preparedness builds the necessary trust with a client immediately. It shows you're a professional.
That immediately addresses the trust element, which is probably the biggest hurdle. The job requirements in the source emphasize being gentle, patient, and responsible. This isn't just about loving animals, it's about being reliable enough to show up at 7 a.m. every single day, even when it's pouring rain outside.
And furthermore, while the source correctly notes that it doesn't require prior professional experience, the student has to take some basic steps in risk mitigation. You're often responsible for the health and safety of an animal.
Right.
A student should have a simple intake form that requires the owner to list the pet's veterinarian, any known allergies or medical conditions, and specific emergency contact numbers. This kind of preparation minimizes your liability, and it shows the owner that you are serious and responsible.
So while the financial barriers to entry are basically zero, the psychological barriers involving responsibility and trust are actually quite high. But for those who genuinely love animals, the source describes this as a relaxing and enjoyable idea. You're effectively turning time spent outdoors into a paid activity.
That enjoyment factor is a huge motivator. And think about the power of referral here. If you successfully walk Mrs. Johnson's dog every day for a month, and you're reliable and communicative,
She's going to tell everyone.
She is going to refer you to her entire neighborhood network. Your business can scale based purely on demonstrating consistent, reliable care. It's a powerful, hyper-local business model that's built entirely on trust and positive word-of-mouth reputation.
It really proves that sometimes the most valuable service you can offer is simply being reliable, compassionate, and highly trustworthy. And those are all qualities a student can demonstrate immediately. So we have just completed a pretty exhaustive tour through 10 very distinct business models, All of them, I think, are perfect for the student's schedule and budget. We covered leveraging bilingual skills in language teaching, the financial discipline you need for online reselling, the zero equipment reality of tutoring and editing, and the high local demand for the kind of reliability required in pet sitting.
And what ties all 10 of these opportunities together, regardless of the category, is the unified piece of advice that the source material gives. It stresses that your success is entirely dependent on choosing an idea that precisely matches your existing skills, but maybe more importantly, aligning with your available free time. Yeah, it's a big one. Trying to run a complex craft business during your final exam week is just, it's a recipe for failure. It's not going to work.
And the path forward, once you've found that alignment, is consistent across the board. Start small, be patient, and grow step by step. This isn't about achieving complex scale overnight. It's about building foundational financial discipline and understanding that every single successful business starts with one simple transaction.
That emphasis on the start small mentality is so important because it removes the paralyzing pressure of needing to have a perfect 40-page business plan. It just requires the commitment to execute that very first step, which is always the hardest one.
So with that, let's leave you, our listener, with a final provocative thought. We've explored 10 fantastic, actionable paths ranging from zero equipment knowledge sharing to hyper-local services. If the goal is rapid execution and learning through doing, we challenge you to consider this. Which one of these 10 ideas requires the absolute lowest commitment of time and money to execute just the first step, that initial act of launching? Is it posting one single perfect photo of your homemade cookies on Instagram? Is it sending one short, polite message to a neighborhood parent offering a free 20-minute language assessment for their child? Focus on that immediate, actionable step, the absolute minimum viable launch, and make a commitment to yourself to execute it by the end of this week.
Take that one small tactical step, be patient with the learning curve, and begin the process of growth.
That is it for this deep dive. We really hope this has given you the confidence and maybe some of the operational clarity you need to turn your skills into immediate income. We'll catch you next time.